Hi, Alison. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lauren. How you doing?
Good. Okay, so I wanted to know because you're a Harvard professor, you're a researcher, and you're now the author of Talk. So I want to know, can you share a little bit about your background and what really led you to become an expert in the science of conversation? I think that's an interesting angle to focus on.
Well, I have always been a lover of people. I'm always been very obsessed with other human beings. I love talking to people. I'm also an identical twin. Um,
Wow, that's cool.
yeah, which I think is uh, not just a coincidence that I ended up kind of devoting my life to helping people uncover the tight-knit shared reality that I have with my twin sister through their own conversations. I was an undergrad at Princeton and I fell in love with behavioral science. A professor there was Danny Kahneman, and it was one of the last times that he taught his course on judgment and decision making, and I fell in love. I got my PhD at Wharton, where I studied people's emotions. And then I got recruited to Harvard Business School to teach the course on negotiation, which is an awesome course. After about 4 years of teaching that course, I started to get a little itchy. I was like, I don't actually feel like I negotiate that much in my life, not in the way that we teach the course, but I do have to talk to people all the time. And I very rarely feel like I'm going in with a goal to persuade people. And I think other people feel the same way. Can I design a course at Harvard that helps our students get better at conversation? Not necessarily difficult ones or like negotiation, but the kinds of conversations we have every day that have very important impacts on our careers and our lives and our relationships. And so I developed this course called Talk. And then after teaching, it kind of hit a nerve, got really popular. And I realized, oh, well, not everyone's going to be able to take this course at Harvard. So I'm gonna write the book that can be for everybody.
Amazing. I'm curious, did you get talks too much on your report card ever?
You know what's funny? I'm not actually a chatty person. I really love asking questions and connecting with people and laughing together. And I like learning about other people. I'm not actually the chattiest person in the world. Plus, I'm like a good girl. I would never be the naughty one in
You would
class.
never break that
How
rule.
dare you?
I feel like there's probably a lot of us listening, including myself. I got talks too much on a report card, and there's some meme on Instagram that's like, if you got that, you're now, doing something where you're working with people, helping people, that's kind of the joke.
Oh,
But
you're hosting a podcast
or
is what
hosting a
you're
podcast,
doing.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Um, Okay, so your new book, Talk, dives deep into the science of conversation. And you talked a little bit about the fact that you turned this into a course and then you thought, okay, I should turn this into a book for other people. But I'm curious too, what made you want to explore this more? Was it the fact that people, to your point, weren't really negotiating as often, but they were talking? Were people coming to you and being like, hey, day-to-day conversations at work are like really tricky. How do I do this? Like, how did you know this was a problem for people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I exist in the world and I see people being awkward and and uncomfortable and anxious and angry and all of the ways that conversations go badly.
Right.
We all see that playing out around us all the time. And I've always felt like, oh, I wish I could help other people enjoy conversation as much as I do. And as much as I see some people enjoying it, and for every person who likes talking to other people, there's like 50 who are like, no, thank you. I hate this. It's awkward. No. So that is an interesting observation about the world. Um, I think in the way that Scott, behavioral scientists, had studied social psychology and communication, I realized about 10 years ago that there are these whole fields dedicated to interpersonal life that had not actually gone to the trouble of recording actual conversations between people and trying to understand them and analyze them at very large scale, largely because we didn't have the tools to do it, the technology, until the last 5 to 10 years. So even though language has been studied for hundreds of years, dialogue, back and forth dialogue it's really a new science that's emerged over the last 10 years. And at the same time, I realized that the sort of aperture of what we were focusing on and teaching our interpersonal skills courses like negotiation very narrowly focused on persuasion and information exchange and sort of like optimizing, like how can we get the most value or the highest profit or whatever out of an interaction. And I was like, that is not at all what I think about when I'm interacting with other people. Is there a way that we can expand the aperture of what we're considering to also include things like fun, levity, helping people, brainstorming, making decisions, things that are not necessarily about persuasion. And so
Yeah.
all of those variables combine to sort of lead us to this place of the talk course and the talk book.
Well, I like that your book is called Talk and not like networking, because I do think the persuasion part of networking is what makes people always feel so icky, like it's always a transaction. And it's like, actually, if you can think about it as like you're just talking to people, which is maybe the first place to start, that part and negotiation, maybe these higher stakes conversations will go a little easier. I don't want to bury the lead because the title of this episode is called The 10-Second Trick to Better Conversations. You talk about this, and I want to know, what is this and why does it work?
I think you're referring to topic prep. We have a bit of research. So the T in talk is for topics. And under each of the letters, topics, asking, levity, kindness, there are lots of little life hacks that are very easy and can help you a lot in your conversations. And one of the first ones that we cover in the book is this idea of topic prep, which is incredibly easy. We've studied this in experiments where we randomly assign people to spend as little as 30 seconds thinking about, okay, in this upcoming conversation, what are some things that we could talk about? Or what will my partner be interested in? What do I mean to talk about? What are the goals of this conversation? Just 30 seconds makes the conversation so much more enjoyable, so much more productive. You feel less anxious. You don't panic when you run out of stuff to talk about because you've got more options in your back pocket. There are fewer disfluencies, we call them. So ums, uhs, stutters, long pauses, those go away because it's the transitions between topics are smoother. You remember to bring up stuff that you mean to bring up because you've like written it down and really thought about it. There's all of these benefits from topic prep, and it can take as little as you said, 10 seconds ahead of time. And for whatever reason, a lot of people don't tend to, some people do this naturally, and kudos to you, keep doing it, lean into it. For people who don't do it, you're not alone. It's not a thing that most people do naturally. And even more than not doing it naturally, a lot of people are reluctant to do it. They think like, oh, well, I shouldn't need to prep when
Right.
I call my mom, or I shouldn't need to, I'm like talking to my bestie or my work friend. I don't need to prep because I'll know what to talk about when we're together. Not only will I know what to talk about, but good conversationalists being good means that I'm supposed to come up with it on the spot. It should be spontaneous and creative and constructed live right there. And planning for it somehow undermines the naturalness or the flow of the conversation. So many people feel this way, and our research suggests that in the experience of actually doing it, that does not play out. It actually makes conversations much smoother.
I agree with this. And I'm curious, how does it work? Do you jot down three things on a piece of paper? It depends probably on who you're talking to. Like I'm thinking a lot in like work situations. Like I in a day can have a one-on-one conversation with my manager. I can be in a team meeting with multiple people, and I might be chatting, having another meeting with somebody on a different team, and we're talking about collaborating together. So those are all like three variations just in one day of conversations I would have. Would I jot down on a piece of paper my three things in each of those? I mean, oftentimes at work, maybe you have a meeting agenda already created. I'm already thinking too, this is like a perfect tool to have AI help you. Like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. You could have, so, and my students do it in any way that works for you, really, like develop your system. There's really two questions. When do your topic ideas come to you? Is it when you're driving? Is it when you're in the shower? Is it when you're emailing and you're like, oh, I need to remember to ask
Right.
Susie about the presentation next week? So, really, topic ideas can come from anywhere at any point. You could be listening to a podcast and be like, oh, I need to tell my friend Jen that she needs to listen to this podcast. So the question of where do the ideas come from is everywhere. And you should sort of be open to that as a concept as you go through your life. The second question is, where do you then collect those ideas? Like, where do you write them down? Where do you store them? There's all kinds of things like really silly, like write them on your hand. Then I find it very helpful to jot them down in my Google Calendar notes. So like every meeting that I'm going to have or every like dinner party or whatever, I'll just collect ideas in that event. And then I can just peek at it so quickly for like 10 seconds before as I'm walking to a meeting or as we're driving to our friend's house for a dinner party, I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, I meant to ask Allie about her kids' tennis lessons. And I know Derek, my husband, I'm like, I know that you really wanted to ask, Jeremy about their upcoming trip, right? So just reminding yourself of these things that probably you were thinking about very nicely away from the conversation, and they may have accumulated over like weeks or months, but like
Right.
put them on the thing and then look at them as you're headed to the conversation. Um, I worked with Google for a bit about this idea of agendas. It's their project that I worked on them with was just getting people to have any agenda whatsoever for their meetings.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that like most people are going into meetings with very well curated agendas, and often that's true for board meetings and for important hiring meetings and things. But I think on average, most work meetings are actually not as well planned as they should be.
Right.
So even a nudge to say, spend 30 seconds thinking about what your goals are for this conversation and what topics you need to discuss in order to achieve those goals are very helpful nudges. And then, write them down wherever you want to on a little piece of paper in front of you is helpful too. My students start keeping spreadsheets of topics that they find helpful to use as like one size fits all topics. So like
Yeah.
anytime they talk to a stranger, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to pull from my spreadsheet," and they have like these amazing lists of all these creative questions to ask people.
As much as I want to make fun of that, I'm already thinking like at work, we have all these internal tools, and I'm like, I can get AI to just like listen to my meeting and already suggest topics for the next one in a page automatically because that's how we work. It's like, yeah. So
Totally.
I want to make fun of that, but I'm also like, no, I understand the reason why you would be like, I want to have my list and your topics. I think that's really great too because it can feel very frustrating when you have the idea after and you're like, oh, I forgot to talk to them about this thing. So I also think that this is like a time management hack in a way too. Uh,
Absolutely. It's very efficient. It's a little bit related to old CRM, like
yeah,
relation model. And there are companies now that are using AI. So this company called Gong records sales calls, analyzes the content, and then suggests topics for the next sales call. For lots and lots of salespeople at big companies, but you can do that on your own,
yeah,
with not just for your work conversations, but all your conversations, even with like your parents. The other thing that's helpful with AI is AI can help you brainstorm topics, right? So often the data sets that AI are trained on have more information about the people you're going to talk to than you do.
yeah.
So even as people that you're close to, like your parents, you could say, hey, like, if you're talking to somebody who's 72, who lives in upstate New York, has 9 grandkids, and likes sailing, what should I ask them? What would they like to be asked? Um, and it'll give you some really good ideas.
It's funny when I first started working at Atlassian, I did that with when you're onboarding, you're always encouraged to like set up meet and greets with people. And Atlassian has an AI tool that goes through everything and we like put all of our goals out there. So I would say I have a meeting with this person. It's my first time meeting them. Tell me what their goals are and three things I could talk to them about.
Amazing.
I feel like the smartest person in the room because they'd be like, wow, I did like you just started it. And I was like, I didn't even do this. AI did it for me. But it was so nice to kind of feel, to your point, like you're not making an agenda. Like sometimes I feel like for those like just meet and greets, I don't want to like make them feel like, oh, there's some expectation out of this with the agenda, but I want an internal agenda, so that I can guide the conversation.
And
Uh,
a backup plan,
yeah.
because what you don't realize is almost even when conversations are going great, you will confront a lull
Yes.
where you're not sure where you should go next, and you will be the hero who's like, oh yeah, by the way, I was thinking about you, and I really wanted to ask about blah, right? And
Yeah.
it's the thing that you had already thought about, and again, you will feel like the smartest, most caring person in the room, and it's not an agenda that you're working through; it's just a good, flexible plan.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious too, obviously you emphasize both the science and the art of conversation in your book. What are some of the biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to connect with others and maybe they're trying to make it natural? Besides not having topics, like what are some of these other mistakes people do?
There is a laundry list of conversational mistakes that is so long, can't even begin to sort of grapple with. When you look under the hood of conversation, the complexity of what we're doing is really astounding. And so it's almost like the better question is like, what are we actually getting right? And how can we celebrate that? But setting that aside, so that is the sort of context of like there's so many things that and so many collisions, and so it's remarkable that we can have successful
That we can talk.
at
Yeah.
all. But let me give you some concrete examples. One that has been fun to study, we call boomerasking. You see this all the time, and it's where I would ask you a question. I'd be like, Lauren, when was the last time you prep topics for a work meeting? You tell me an example, and then I'm like, let me tell you about this amazing topic that I prepped for my last meeting. And so it's like throwing out a boomerang. I'm asking you a question under the guise that I'm actually interested in you. And then I kind of ignore your answer and bring it right back to myself.
Wow. Yes, everyone is probably nodding. Yes, you see this
Yes.
all the time. Mhm.
And sometimes you'll see it, and sometimes it's really egregious. So someone will ask a question like, have you ever been skiing in Switzerland? And you're like, oh, I'm like, oh, let me tell you about my trip last week. Like
Yeah.
it can get a little bit outrageous. So that we make moves like that all the time that are very cringy, that are very obviously egocentric with this thin veil of interest in somebody else. And you're much
Yeah.
better off just saying, I'm so excited to tell you about my trip to Switzerland. It was so awesome, and I think you would love it. With enthusiasm is much better than sort of framing it in a way that signals like insincere interest in
Right.
your partner. So boomerasking is one to avoid. Another one are backhanded compliments. So flattery is so powerful, Lauren. Like everyone in the world is walking around dying to hear how kind and beautiful and smart and wonderful they are. And even when compliments are obviously insincere, they still make us feel great. There's lots of ways. The power of flattery is like really a very robust finding in science. Um, the caveat to that, though, is the backhanded compliment, where you start with a normal compliment like "you're so smart," and then you make very salient what the comparison set is. So I say like, "You're so smart for an intern," or "That presentation was really impressive, especially for a woman," or whatever the little subset of the population. So instead of making someone feel like they're at the top of a distribution of like, wow, you're so smart, your presentation was so good, I really admire your slide design, you're now taking a subset of that distribution and saying, well, you're at the top of this piece of the distribution, and that piece of the distribution is not the best one. And that really undermines the power of our compliments. Why do people do it? I think, I mean, like most things out of insecurity, you're sort of saying, like, I want to give you a compliment, but I don't want to look dumb by comparison, or I want to maintain my own status as I'm doing it. And it really undercuts the power, the magic of compliments. Um, why don't I do one more? So we did boomerasking and backhanded compliments. ZQs is another one. Have you ever been on a date with somebody who didn't ask any questions?
No, but I did sit next to one at dinner. Like I could hear their date, and it was very uncomfortable. Very.
So bad. So bad. We call them ZQs. So people who ask zero questions for the course of a conversation. And that sounds sort of extreme, but it does happen quite frequently. Um, and a lot of times their partner will realize it, right? Like after 20 minutes of not being asked anything, it becomes really salient. You're like, oh my God, are they really not interested
Yeah.
in me at all? And it's not just at dates, right? It's at work meetings. It's
That's what I
it's
was just thinking. This is
it's everywhere.
everywhere.
It's everywhere. So that's a common mistake is not asking enough questions.
And why is that a mistake? Because you're not learning about the other person, because it's not going back and forth. I only say this because I I do see this a lot at work. Like one person monopolizes the whole conversation, whether it's even getting like asking for feedback or input or whatever. So what are they missing out on by doing that?
All the good things we want in conversation, both information exchange and the relational benefits. Asking questions is the most direct pathway to uncover information, to learn what is in someone else's mind. It's the only way, right? We hear this phrase perspective taking all the time. You can't actually guess what someone else is in someone else's mind. The only way to do it is to ask them, and then they tell you directly. But that you have to be asking in order to understand another person's perspective. So there, it unlocks information exchange, of course, but also, and I think maybe this is the part that we get wrong, is it has relational benefits. Because when I ask you questions, it shows that I care about your perspective, that I want to learn from you, that I am listening to your answers, and that I want to know more. And no matter where you are, whether it's on a date or with your family or at work, everybody wants that. Everybody wants other people to learn about their perspective and to feel known and understood. And so questions do so many other sort of micro things as well. They make a conversation more ping-pongy, right? You're tapping the
Right.
interactivity. The thing that dialogue allows us to do is that it's not just two people like giving pitches to each other. They're able to actually interact, and questions are do that. They tap the power of interactivity. They also help us improvise. So if you get to a lull or you're not sure what to talk about next, just ask a follow-up question. Right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, like what date what restaurant were you at when you opened it? Thank you. And so that the follow-up questions are just amazing. They help unlock even more information. They show that you are listening to somebody. So anyway, if you're not asking questions, you're missing out on all of these benefits.
Absolutely. What about the person who struggles to get their point across? Like we've all been in a meeting with the person where it's like you're going on and on and on, and you're like, wow, I we've lost the plot. Like, what are you saying again? And it's sometimes these people are aware of it too. They're like, sorry, I know I keep going on, but they like can't stop themselves. What advice would you give to them to be able to like have better conversations?
It's funny, a lot of the students who show up in my class, one of their core goals is to become more articulate.
Hmm.
And we never in the class, and not even really in the book, talk about like, well, what do you need to think and say to become a more articulate, succinct person? But I think if you go through all of the maxims, topics, asking, lovely kindness, it will happen automatically as you go along. So let me give more information. Psychologists talk about this thing called misarticulation, where you know what you're trying to convey in your head, but somehow it just comes out wrong. You're not quite articulating it in the way that you intend to articulate it. This is a very common experience. Almost everybody feels this way all the time because when we speak, we're doing a very complicated curation task. We're taking like this incredible amount of information in our minds and trying to convey it with sentences in a back and forth turn taking with somebody else. So I think a level of acceptance of like, of course, we're going to feel like we're misarticulating our ideas can go a really long way. And also having more grace and patience for others who are like, oh, I didn't say that quite right, or I said it the wrong way. Can I try it again? That can be really helpful. What you were describing, Lauren, is sort of adjacent to misarticulation, which is like over talking. It's like talking for too long. And people do that all the time as well. It's the opposite problem from under participation, so like not saying enough. Um, Interruptions get a bad rap in general, but when you're talking to an overtalker, interruptions can be really powerful. When I have a student who's talking for too long in my class, one of the ways that I like to interrupt them is by using their name. So if they're going on and on and on, I would just say, Lauren, Lauren. So what I've heard so far is this, right? And you summarize back to them what they've said. And then you don't hand the baton back to them. You literally turn to somebody else and you're like, Sarah, what do you think about what Lauren has just suggested here? So it's almost like you're taking the conversational power away from them, but it doesn't feel pushy because they hear you respond to what you were saying, right? It shows that you were listening to them and maybe even help them
Yeah.
articulate it more in a more pithy way.
Yeah, they need a buddy to come in and like save them from themselves a little bit
Interpret,
sometimes.
interpret. It's one of my favorite things to do in meetings. My work bestie always calls me out after the meetings. He's like, "You did the thing where you nearly interrupt them and say, I think what he's saying here is really brilliant. It's this." And you try and summarize it really succinctly. And everybody's like, "Yeah." And then it can carry on, but you just saved the group like 5 minutes by trying to summarize it in a more succinct way.
Also, you added flattery. I saw what you did there.
Always, always with the flattery. It's also something that's important to note is even if you're in a low status position, you can do that on behalf of the group. You don't actually need to have expertise on the topic that's being discussed in order to say, oh, what I'm hearing from Lauren is that I think we should think about, well, are we hiring for this reason or this reason? And that itself is a very meaningful contribution that only required that you were listening.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
that
how
you
it's just thinking. It's like a
knowledge.
leadership skill that is in you, whether you are, quote, a leader or not, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I think a lot of times when we're low status, it is a very difficult position to be in, and it drives you to be quiet and not talk as much. But you should always remember that you have so many options available to you that don't require expertise in order to be helpful. So asking a good question, giving a compliment, trying to rephrase what someone else has said, asking a clarifying question. All of these are very meaningful and important contributions that don't require a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I see a lot, and this made me just think of that, is people will be like, well, how do I engage with someone's content on LinkedIn? Like you're trying to network or build a relationship with someone, it's a complete stranger. And I will tell them, engage in their content. Like this is just a low-hanging fruit item. But they're like, how do I do it? And I think what you just said, ask a question, give a compliment, and like engaging with it shows that you are listening or you are interested in what they're saying. And so I'm finding that some of the stuff you're describing also works really well offline, and we do live our worlds in email, in Slack, online. And so would you agree with that? Like part of this conversation piece is also the written part.
Absolutely. Yeah. The book and the course focus largely on face-to-face or synchronous conversations because it's the most cognitively demanding. It's the one that happens the fastest.
Yeah.
But so many of the things that work well face-to-face also work well online or in text. So, right, asking questions, giving compliments, expressing gratitude, saying, "Oh, I love this. It really reminds me of this other thing. Can I connect you with them?" Right?
Mhm.
Like so connecting adjacent ideas. These are all incredibly helpful contributions that help us engage with people in a way that doesn't feel empty, like good or just like congratulations or good job, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's almost like reflecting about what makes you feel good. We all like getting compliments. We like when people say thank you. We like when people point us to a link that's actually helpful to us, and then do that for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious as we wrap up. I'm thinking about, how this plays into someone's career success. It's almost like one of those things where it's like, yeah, being able to be good at conversation, whether you're in one-on-ones or in a team. Like I had to present in front of my team the other day, and so I'm thinking selfishly about my own career. Like this is a skill that is required to be successful in your job. So, any tips to people who are like, I'm not that great at this, or this is not my favorite thing, and I got to get better at this, or any pieces of advice related to their overall career success and how to be better with this part?
Yeah. First of all, you're not alone. Even the best communicators have a lot of room for improvement. We're all just making it up as we go along, and conversation is an incredibly complicated coordination game, and no one will ever be perfect at it. So, accepting that complexity and giving yourself grace for feeling like, oh, I'm not so good at it. Yeah, you and everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
And I think what can help is thinking really deeply of what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, and leaning into your strengths and sort of workshopping your weaknesses. One of the things that I've learned by teaching this course to hundreds of students at once is that everybody comes in with very different strengths and weaknesses. Some people are really funny. Some people are really great question askers. Some people are already planning topics before their conversations, and others are not, right? Some people are super boring. Some people are not funny. Some people are not creative. Some people are very focused and need to sort of open up and learn how to really think about others. So, asking people around you, what do you think I'm good at and not good at, and seeking their feedback can be incredibly empowering. And then, really sincerely trying to work on becoming a better question asker, incorporating more levity, becoming a more attentive listener, using your words to show people that you're listening to them, prepping topics, moving between topics more quickly. All of these things are skills that everybody can get better at.
Yeah, and I think that when you are better at it, you're going to have more successful meetings that lead to work getting done and then an outcome. But like I see the long-term trajectory of like how this one conversation can end up being much more than a conversation. It's a work win, it's a promotion, it's, time with your boss and learning a really interesting insight or something like that. So, yeah, I think I'm so grateful that you turned this course into a book because we don't all have time to go to Harvard Business School. That's our biggest problem here. And I think this is one of those, I'm sure you've been told this about your book, but this is one of those skills. Again, it's a life skill, not just for work, it's for everything. And it's probably a book that people can come back to many times as they are having a challenge, or they're like, oh, what was the tip about doing this one thing? Like, I have an interview coming up. I should prepare the topics to ask each interviewee, right? Like things like that. Is that how you would approach your book as well?
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. My students at the end of the course are always like, how do I remember all the things that we learned? And I think just challenging yourself to try new things, like maybe in the next day, challenge yourself to prep topics more than you usually would, or challenge yourself to ask more follow-up questions more than you usually would. Experiment with what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And yeah, you can always come back to the book and check in and see what's going well and what you can workshop the next day.
Amazing. Okay, the book is called Talk. I love that you made it so easy for us. I'll put it in the show notes. Share other places where people can find you, follow your work, things like that.
Amazing. Yep. My website is AlisonWoodBrooks.com. There is a talk workbook with lots of conversation topics and exercises to try with your work colleagues or with your friends or family members. That's free for download there. You can follow me on Instagram, Prof. Alison Brooks, or on LinkedIn, where I post lots of articles and ideas and links and things.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Laura. This is great.